Hello, Ellen. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for allowing me to do your 2D and 3D analysis as well as your movement screen a few weeks ago. I want to go through 12 swing characteristics and uh, can also clarify a few things. So, one, we look for initially slide and a sway or sway and slide, however you want to go. So, on the backswing, we're making sure you're not going too far to the right, which we're not. And then, sorry, this camera moves a little bit, and then there's definitely no slide there. So one thing I do want to point out, I think when you did your swing, I talked about weight shift, and I was like, hey, are you shifting your weight? And you said, no, I don't, want to sway. Most golfers at your level don't sway, and so that's not as big of a concern of mine. But the question is, where is your pressure at this point in time? And I think if we got some force plates, um, we would see. But if I had to guess where your pressure is based off your swing, I would actually say it's probably either in the center or a little bit to the left. All right. One Another area we look for is make sure you don't have reverse spine angle, which you don't. But if you kind of look, it looks like you're leaning towards the target at this point, even though you have a great shoulder turn. Just kind of as I go back, just kind of look at your body and kind of visually, that's kind of what I was seeing. I was like, hey, are you on your left side or your right side? And that right leg, we'll see from the other view, looks like it does straighten out a lot. And so that may be contributing to this angle here. And so, and I'll send you a video that talks about the shifting of the weight. And sometimes it is semantics. So when I say that, I'm wondering, are you putting pressure on this right side? And then for the swing, are you shifting the weight towards the target? So there actually is a weight shift that occurs. And so I'll send you a video that clarifies that. But definitely no slide, no sway. But the other thing I'm looking for is, are you what we call hanging back? And so, and this kind of goes along with that pressure weight shift. So as I get you here, many times we actually want you, let me redraw the line, to close that gap at this point. And that lets us know if you're getting appropriate weight shift towards the target. And really what that means is your coil is great. You're coiling, and that's really where all your power is coming from. And then you can see well after you hit, then your weight goes forward. And that's really more so biomechanics than true weight shift. So what we would want to see is those hips, they're rotating, but there's really no significant movement towards the target. And again, I'll send you a video that clarifies that piece. And the reason this is important to us, because that's a major power leak. Um, you have a strong base, and based off the 2D analysis and the 3D analysis, you aren't fully utilizing it. And so you're losing some yards off the tee there. All right. And again, when we get to the 3D part, I'll explain that a little bit more. And so my main concern for you is that you're hanging back, which can relate to lack of a weight shift. And so I'm going to take it to the top here. And I'm going to draw an angle. Here, 74 degrees. Then when you get to the splash, we'll say here, maybe one more. We want that angle to decrease, which it does for you. So you're doing a good job compressing there. And so you are getting a lot of power there, kind of like the greater the degree, um, the greater energy generation, and then you're not chicken wing at all on that left leg, excuse me, that left arm. So you're doing good from that standpoint. So the main thing I'm seeing is hanging back, meaning that you're not closing that gap on the left side. You're rotating the hips, but there's no shifting of the weight. All right. I'm going to switch over to the down the line view. And here, what I'm looking for, any evidence of C posture, S posture. So nice flat lower back there. Move this down. One thing that will do is loss of posture. And so draw a line, head, hips, knee, ankle. And for the most, sorry, getting a little click happy there. And so for the most part, we want you to stay within those lines during the swing, all right? Some people will dip a little bit, which is perfectly fine. They get a little bit more knee flexion on the way back. All right, so good job. So no evidence of loss of posture there. You have a nice angled shoulder plane. So we're good there. Next thing we look for is to see if you're coming in the slot, any evidence of over the top on the swing. And I'm going to take you out to here. All right, so your slot may be a little different because you have a shallow, let me see where I want you. All right, I'm gonna draw a few lines and we'll see how you do there. That's a little bit too wide. So if I go here, that means your angle is, oops. Oh, Kimosabe. All right, let's see which one you fall into. All right, so you're, it's a little tricky getting over the top because when you take it back, it's fairly flat. So if I did here, let me redo it. And now let's see if you get anywhere in between there. So looking basically if your hands follow in the slot, it kind of depends on where I mark it. Because of where how you take the club back, it makes this analysis a little trickier to do. All right, so I'm gonna say you're not over the top. If you're having issues topping the ball, let me know and I can change that. Next thing we look for in this view is loss of space. So what we want to see here, so when we draw that line, when you rotate, we want the right glute to dissect it, and we really don't want you coming off that line. You see how those hips go slightly forward, that tuck in? And so we call that loss of space, excuse me, early extension, sorry, loss of space in softball, baseball. But early extension, that means those hips are going forward. So you're decreasing the amount of space between the ball and the hips. And you want to maintain that space for those hands to be able to slide through. And most of the times it is related to pelvic strength, pelvic rotation. And we do know that you do have some issues on your movement screen when it comes to separating your pelvis from your upper half. So that'll be something with the corrective exercises that we can address, so early extension. All right. And so we're going to switch over to your 3D analysis. And on the 3D analysis, at this lower left, what we're looking at is just your X factor, which is separation of your shoulders and your pelvis. And you do great there. And probably the most important piece is this part here. We call it the kinematic sequence. And what we're looking at is just how's your sequencing of your lower body, your trunk, and your arm. And so when we see this little area right here is where we're looking at, and we want them to peak. And so whether they peak up or down doesn't matter, but also the sequencing in which they peak. So when we look at the graph, The orange is your pelvis, so we want that actually peaking first, followed by your thorax. We want it peaking second, and then finally we want your upper arm to peak. And that means you're in sequence. The hips are firing, the thorax are firing, and then your arms are firing. That means you're uncoiling and you have an appropriate transfer of power. But what we're seeing here, hopefully I got this right. There we go. Your arms are uncoiling first, followed by your hips, and then your thorax. And this peak in the thorax in the green should actually be, at least on this graph, it should be lower, which until if we flipped it would be higher. And so you're not getting an appropriate transfer of power from your lower body. And again, feel like you have a strong base. And so this represents a significant power leak within your swing. And if we go back to the swing, if we look here on the right, so you're going, and what's happening is those arms are just accelerating so fast. So right here, your hips should actually be cleared out. But you see like they're fairly parallel, but your arms have pretty much caught up and they have peaked velocity-wise here. Then your hips go, and then your trunk, your spine, kind of see right here, never really rotates, all right? And this does go back to your movement screen. Remember how I was grabbing your left hip and you fell back? So some of that is related to that difficulty separating your upper body from your lower body. So when we do the corrective exercises, they're going to be real important. I would even, do the pelvic rotation ones on a daily basis to see if you get that. Because I think if we can address the loading on the right, weight shift to the left, and then the rotation of the hips, I think you're going to see a significant power gain, particularly off the tee. And I think you can see that probably within the next 6 to 8 weeks if we can help correct this. All right. So you're not far off. I think we can get you to where you have an increase in power. And like I said, I'll send you a video that explains the loading on the right and then the weight shift down the target line. Again, some of it may be semantics, but again, as you saw on the other one, see if I can get it to pop up real quick. Feel like the coil is there, the rotation is there, but again, not the weight shift. And the question is, where is your weight at the top, or excuse me, where is the pressure at the top? I would suspect that it's either still in the middle or a little bit to the left, and we actually want it over to the right side there. All right. So, it looks like your knee was here. You see a lot of flexion of the knee, look straight. On the side view, you didn't really have much of a change. But what you're doing here is because those hips are unable to separate the lower body, you're trying to generate more power. So this is actually a compensatory move because of your hips and thoracic tightness there. All right. And then again, there's rotation, but there's not really that bump to the left, that weight shift that we want to see. All right. All right. We'll be talking soon. Take care.